This is something that happened a couple of years ago. One night, I was home by myself during a thunderstorm. We lived in a neighborhood that had many other houses in it. Still, usually it was pretty quiet. Well, on this night, there was a very loud thunderstorm. I knew that we were supposed to be getting rain, but I didn't know that it was supposed to be such a big storm. As I was sitting inside at about 9 o'clock, I remember hearing it start to rain, and I looked out of a window. But overall, I didn't think too much of it. Maybe 30 minutes later though, there was really loud thunder, lots of lightning, and pouring rain. I was glad that I was home and inside. So I was in the living room during this storm, but I thought that I heard the sound of something hitting the back window. I got up and went into the kitchen. I really had no idea what it was, but when I entered the kitchen, I thought that I saw somebody moving away from the window outside. I just saw them for a split second. I really didn't know for sure what had happened. I just knew that I heard a noise and it seemed like somebody was there. So I went to a different window and turned the backyard light on. I looked around the backyard, but didn't see anybody. The backyard was not very large, but had a little bit of space, which was grass and a few plants and trees here and there. I stayed in the kitchen for a while. For the next few minutes, nothing was out of the ordinary. I continued to hear the loud storm, and only saw the lightning occasionally in the yard. Just when I was about to head back to the living room though, I noticed a man come out from behind a tree. I really couldn't believe it when I saw him. He walked a little closer to my house. I went over and turned the backyard light off and then on again. I wasn't really sure what else to do, but this would probably let the guy know that I saw him. And when I did this, the man turned and ran towards the back of my yard. He went behind some bushes that bordered the neighbor behind my yard. I figured that the guy was leaving for good now. After he went out of sight, I went back into the living room. I was wondering if I should call the police or what the guy was doing, but I figured that he was gone. The storm continued for another 20 minutes or so. Then things actually quieted down. It was still raining, but much calmer, and there was no longer lightning or thunder anymore. It was more of just a light sprinkle now, and I was planning on going to bed pretty soon. But I happened to go back into the kitchen, and when I did, I saw the guy in the yard again. This time, he was walking closer to the back window, and was maybe 20 feet away. I moved back quickly so that he wouldn't see me. The guy then walked right up to the window, and seemingly tried opening it. I went back and turned the light on and off again, but the man stayed where he was and didn't move. That's when I knew that I had to call the police. I went over into the other room and got my phone. Then I dialed 911. After that, I heard a loud noise coming from the back window. I got away from there and moved to the other side of my house. Then I waited for the police to arrive and hoped that the guy wouldn't be able to break in. I was really concerned that I would hear the window smash or something any moment, but I didn't. Soon the police got there. I met them at the front door of my house and told them what was going on. They went into the backyard and looked around. But when they did, they couldn't find the guy. He had left. After talking with the police for a while, they left and they told me to call again if the man returned. I really thought that he would, but he actually didn't. After that, I didn't see the man again. He never got into my house, luckily. I really don't know what exactly he was doing there, but I'm really glad that he didn't break in. A few weeks ago, I was driving home from work. It was about 6 p.m. and the clouds were very dark. I could tell that a storm was coming. Now, it would take me about 30 minutes to drive back most of the time. On the way home, it started to rain. The rain started to come down extremely hard and it was getting worse and worse. There was also loud thunder, and driving became very difficult. I was on a highway which usually wasn't too busy, but in this storm was especially quiet. This road was mostly surrounded by quieter land, but occasionally there would be businesses. So I was driving on the highway and in the right lane, and the rain picked up even more. It got to the point where I could barely see 20 feet in front of me. My windshield wipers just couldn't keep up with the rain, and they were going as fast as they could. To me, I didn't think that it would rain this hard for very long. More than likely, I was just in the worst part of the storm, and it would blow over soon. So I pulled off to the side of the road and stopped. I was hoping things would calm down within about 5 minutes or so, then I could keep going. But in that moment, there was no way that I was trying to drive through that. So after stopping, I put my car in park and then watched the rain pound against my windshield. It was extremely loud. I pulled out my phone to try to get a look at the live radar and have an idea of the storm. So as I was doing that, maybe 30 seconds to a minute after pulling over, I heard a noise. It was coming from behind me, and I turned around to see what appeared to be a man standing at my rear passenger side door. I was really confused. The man then tried opening the door. Luckily, it was locked. I couldn't really tell what he looked like very well because of the pouring rain. The man sort of moved away from my car and then went back to it again. Then I saw something out of the corner of my eye in front of me. I turned and looked, and there was another guy walking right in front of my car. Then he kind of stopped near the hood. I wanted to drive away now, but this guy was blocking me. The other guy started knocking on my back passenger side window. I just ignored it. What was I supposed to do? After a few moments, the guy at the front of my car then started walking to my window. He made it to my driver's door and then tried opening it, and when it wouldn't open, he started knocking on the window. But at least he wasn't blocking my car anymore. Right when that happened, I put my car into drive and started moving away. I left the men standing there on the side of the road. It was still raining very heavy, but not quite as bad as when I had pulled over. I made it up to a slow speed and then went ahead to the next exit. Then I carefully drove to a gas station and called the police. I told them what happened and basically waited out the rest of the storm there. Then when things quieted down, I was able to drive the rest of the way home. I still don't know who those guys were. The fact that they were out in such a storm is very weird on its own, but they were both trying to get inside of my car. I didn't get a good look at either of them, but hopefully they don't do that to anybody else. A couple of years ago, I was walking home from work. Back then, I lived in this apartment building that was really close to my job, so I would usually walk to and from work. Well, to be honest, I never really looked at the weather that much. One day, I went into work and it was a warm, sunny day when I got there. But when I got off at like 11 o'clock at night, I remember I was leaving and I was seeing some lightning sort of off in the distance, but it was not raining yet. I walked on the sidewalk for most of the way, and I do remember hearing somebody walking a ways back behind me shortly after leaving work. But then it started to rain, and seemingly within seconds, it started pouring. I did not have an umbrella or anything, so I started to run back home. It got really loud from thunder and stuff, and I basically sprinted the rest of the way back. So instead of taking 10 minutes, it probably took me only 5. Then I arrived back at my apartment building. The building was not really that big, but it did have a couple of floors, and I was on the second. When I made it to the sidewalk in front of my building, I stopped running and walked. I was soaking wet. About the time that I arrived at my front door is when I suddenly heard footsteps behind me again. As I opened up the door to my apartment building, I saw that a man was behind me, and he started to come in the door after me. I didn't know who he was, and I didn't really know if he lived here or not. When I got inside, I was just in the first area, and there was another door that you had to unlock. I stopped in that area to check the packages left in the entrance. I wasn't expecting a package, but I did this to let the man go in front of me. Except when I did, the man tried opening the locked door, and then when it wouldn't open, he just kind of stood next to it. It was almost as if he was waiting for me to unlock it for him. The guy was wearing a black rain jacket with the hood up, but appeared to have dark hair. He did not say anything as he stood there. I would have to go in, so I walked over to the door and used my key fob to unlock it. When I did, the man opened the door and walked right in before I did. It was kind of rude, but I watched him go to the right down the hallway. I then went to the elevator, which was very close by. I went up to the second floor and then got off. My room was just a ways down that hallway. I arrived at my door, unlocked it, and went inside. Now, I was still soaking wet, so before doing anything else, I quickly went to my bedroom. I went to take off my sweatshirt, which had got the most wet, and put it in my hamper. Right when I entered my bedroom, though, I heard the front door to my apartment opening. I had forgot to lock it. I didn't know who it could be. I quickly went to my bedroom door and closed it, then locked that as well. I heard footsteps enter my place and begin to walk around. The person inside of my apartment did not say anything though. I decided to ask who it was. I called out to them, asking who they were and what they were doing, but I got no response. I heard the person walking around, and then opened a door, but I couldn't tell what door it was. Then I finally called the police. I was told that they would be there very soon. I then yelled to the person in my apartment that I had called the police. I was hoping that this would scare them off, but they didn't say anything. And after I said it, I heard them continue to walk around my place. Then the footsteps got closer, and I heard them get right outside of my bedroom door. They tried opening the door, and then slowly walked away after it wouldn't open. Not too long after this though, I kind of stopped hearing the footsteps altogether. Things seemed to get very quiet. I wasn't really sure what happened. Several minutes later, I still hadn't heard anything other than the thunderstorm in the distant background. Then there was a knock at my front door. I figured that this had to be the police. I carefully opened up my bedroom door and looked out. The place appeared to be empty. I then went over and saw that the police were at my front door. I opened it up and let them in. I explained what happened and they searched my entire apartment, but nobody was there. I really think that it was the man who I had let into the building that had gotten in my apartment. I told the police that, but I didn't have any proof. Then they left. I made sure to lock my door and I had no problems after that. I still think it was that man. I also think that he was probably the same person that was walking behind me on the sidewalk shortly after I left from work. That means that he would have had to run home after me in the rain the entire way. It gives me the creeps to think back to it. This is something that happened when I was a kid. I think that I was about 10 years old. Well, during this time, I lived in a house with my parents and older sister. I had my own bedroom, and one night, I woke up due to a very loud thunderstorm. I remember that it was almost 2 o'clock in the morning. There was loud thunder happening outside, and when I woke up, I was wide awake. I tried to fall back asleep for a minute, but I couldn't. So I remember that at that point, I got out of my bed, and I looked out the window into the backyard. I could see that it was raining very heavy, and there was a lot of lightning as well. I decided to play on my PlayStation in my bedroom until I either got sleepy again or the storm stopped. I always had a hard time sleeping with loud noises, so I was hoping that the storm would calm down very soon. I sat down in my gaming chair and started to play. For the next 10 minutes or so, that's what I did. At one point, I randomly turned around to look out the window though, and when I did, I saw what appeared to be a person moving away from the window really quickly. I didn't get a good look at all. My heart started racing though, and I didn't know why anybody would be at the window. I got up and walked over to it and looked out into the backyard. I couldn't really see anything. It was mostly just dark and raining. I went back over to my gaming chair and sat back down. Now I was really wide awake. I still didn't want to wake my parents or anything though, but I didn't know how to explain seeing a person at my window. I hoped to distract myself by just playing more video games. I remember that I kept telling myself not to turn around and look to the window again. The window was directly behind me. I played on my PlayStation for maybe 20 or 30 more minutes. Then I just decided to look behind me, and when I did, I saw that there was a person standing at the window again. Once more, they moved away, but it was slightly longer than the previous time. It appeared to be a man, and he was looking right inside at me. This time, I got up and ran out of my room to my parents down the hallway. I woke them up and told them that there was a man at my window. They got up and checked outside, as well as calling the police, but the man was not there anymore, and the police didn't find anything. It took me a long time to fall back asleep, but eventually I did. I covered my window, and I kept it covered for weeks. Luckily, that man never came back that I'm aware of. To this day, I still wonder who he was. I currently live in an apartment, and this is an event that took place maybe a month ago. There was a big thunderstorm going on. I was inside my place and hearing the rain and thunder and occasionally seeing the lightning. I didn't mind thunderstorms. and I found them to be pretty relaxing. It's funny because as a kid, I was scared of them, but not anymore. So during this storm, I was in my living room watching a show on my TV. Out of nowhere, at almost 10 o'clock, there was a really loud knock at my front door. This seemed kind of strange because of how late it was. I had no idea as to who it would be. I wasn't really that close with any of my neighbors that they would knock on my door, and with it being this hour, it was especially strange. I decided to just ignore it, but then there was another knock. I almost didn't get up at all, but I was curious. So I decided to go and see who was there, but I was still pretty sure that I didn't want to answer it. I went over to the door and then looked out of my peephole. I saw that there was a man standing there who I didn't know. He was wearing all black and looking right at my door. He had long hair that was wet, as if he had been out in the rain maybe. The guy looked really creepy, so I quickly moved away from the door and hoped that he would leave. After about a minute though, he knocked again. I still was not going to answer it. I stayed in the living room on my couch. He didn't knock again after that though. So I stayed out in the living room watching TV for maybe another hour. Then I went into my bedroom to go to sleep. When I got into my room, I remember looking out of the window at the rain. My apartment was on the second floor and looked out to the parking lot of the complex. When I did, I noticed that the same man who had knocked on my door was standing out there. He was in the middle of the parking lot in the pouring rain and staring right at me. He wasn't moving or walking around. He was just standing there. It really gave me the creeps. I then closed my window shades and tried my best to fall asleep. Eventually, I was able to. Since then, I haven't seen the guy. I still don't know who he is, why he knocked on my door, or why he was staring at my window. I'm hoping that I never see him again.